Hey there, and thank you for joining me on the Retro Game Couch. The original BitBoy was a fun little device, but it had a lot of shortcomings. For starters, it could only do NES emulation, and it didn't do that very well. And it had 300 built-in games, and that isn't really legal. It was also missing a headphone jack. All in all, a bit of a weird device. Now BitBoy discontinued that product and replaced it by the new BitBoy V3, or as we just all call it, the BitBoy 2. And this fixed a lot of the issues. No longer did it have 300 built-in games. They replaced that by a micro SD card slot on which you put your ROMs. They gave it a headphone jack, and they added a lot more emulators, so this is all in all a better device. But both devices have quite a weak CPU, so they're pretty limited in what you can do with them. Now there is a new BitBoy called the PocketGO, which has a faster CPU, a new form factor, and will only get better. So in this video we're gonna check it out, so let's go! So here is the PocketGO. In the box you get a charging cable, you get a microSD to USB adapter, and you get a very small sheet with some basic instructions. What's also in the box, and I think that's a really nice touch, are these 4 buttons which I've installed, which make your PocketGO look exactly like a Super Nintendo controller. And the original buttons, which are these ones, are in the exact same color scheme as the original Game Boy, so that's a really nice homage to the Super Nintendo and Game Boy era. Let's take a look around the device. On the left we have an on and off switch, we have shoulder buttons, a micro SD card slot, AV out, a micro USB charging port, headphone jacks, and a reset button. And on the right we have a physical volume slider. Moving to the front, we have the 4 buttons, which feel really nice. We have a D-pad which is not too spongy, and 2 buttons that are really clicky. The screen lens is made of tempered glass, which is a nice bonus, and the overall build quality is just really good. The PocketGO comes with community-created custom firmware pre-installed. The custom firmware is also constantly being updated, which means that with every firmware update, the PocketGO gets a bit better in the form of fixes, new emulators, or new games. The custom firmware includes a big list of games that are ported to the ARM9 CPU that this device runs on. More on that in a bit. Instructions on how to update your PocketGO are on the BitBoy website, link in the description, but again, every PocketGO is delivered with custom firmware pre-installed. As mentioned, the PocketGO runs on an ARM9 CPU. It's called the F1C100S, which has 32 megabytes of built-in DDR1 memory. It has a very nice 2.4-inch IPS screen, same as found in the BitBoy 2, displaying everything at 240 by 320 pixels, and it advertises to have a 1000 mAh cell. However, upon opening the device, it reveals it actually has a Casio cell which has a capacity of 1035 mAh, which is awesome. The cell is also replaceable, which is nice. The package includes an 8 gig SD card, which not only holds the ROMs, but also the software that the console runs on. Something that is a bit weird is the AV port. The port is there, but BitBoy didn't include the cable for it, so I hooked it up using the cable from the previous BitBoy, hoping that it was just a cost-saving measure. However, I could not get it to output anything, and after doing some research, I found out that the feature is not working. It's unclear if it will be supported by later firmware revisions, but if this feature is the main reason for you to buy this console, you might have to look elsewhere. The specs of the PocketGO are pretty on point except for 2 things. First, the RAM. The RAM is a bit slow and 32 megabytes is not a lot of memory. Second is the screen that runs at a maximum of 30 frames per second. In some CPU intensive emulators like the PlayStation 1 emulator or complex and fast games, this might be noticeable. For me, during testing, this wasn't a deal breaker, and I honestly didn't notice it. So enough talking, let's play some games. Let's first check out the emulators. With the current custom firmware, the PocketGO supports Amiga, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color, NES, Super NES, Sega Master System and Game Gear, Sega Mega Drive, Atari 2600, Atari Lynx, PC Engine, MAME, this is another Game Boy emulator, Neo Geo, DOS, Pokemon, Wonder Swan, PlayStation 1 and Vectrex. Pressing the select button on any emulator icon lets you configure that particular emulator, and the options vary per emulator and let you set things like visual filters, key bindings and CPU speed up to 900 MHz. Some emulators require you to download a BIOS file and place it on the SD card in a specific folder. More info about that is on the wiki of the custom firmware, link in the description. In any emulator, pressing the reset key lets you load and save states and tweak various settings. For me, what really sets this device apart from other emulation devices is the additional games that are ported to the ARM9 driven device. The custom firmware currently includes games like Wolfenstein, Blakestone, Doom, Quake and Rise of the Triads. Yes, all great 90s shooters are here. So, do I recommend you getting the new BitBoy PocketGO? It's being sold for $40, and for that $40 you get a device with a better form factor that is technically superior to its two predecessors. It's definitely the better device of the three, and the fact that it's run on custom firmware that's constantly being updated by the community means that it will only get better in the future. So yes, definitely check out the PocketGO. That's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time on the Retro Game Couch.